All right. Well, it is a great Wednesday
It
here in
is.
Oviedo. I almost forgot about Pastor Talk.
Yeah, we didn't do a lot of prep on this.
There's just like
This is
so
going to be
many,
very spontaneous
yes, and
today.
very short,
Very short.
or it could be the
Goodbye.
opposite. Yeah. So, our question of the day is if you were famous, because clearly you're not, what would you be
Yeah.
famous for?
I tried to tell her initially that I already am famous, but I couldn't pull that off. So
Infamous,
the
famous.
the best thing about me is my family. I just have the best. I do. I have the best family. They're so colorful and entertaining, and they're all busy out doing stuff.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
Dustin's always got her projects and stuff, and I just try to kind of stay out of the way. But that's probably my best, most famous thing is
Your family?
my family. Yeah,
That's the nicest answer
yeah,
in the world.
yeah.
Like, I am the opposite of that. It would be, as a matter of fact, if I would not be famous for my family, and I'm not talking about immediate family, but extended family, it would be infamous,
Infamous.
100%.
Infamous.
I remember going to visit my Aunt Frances,
Okay.
and I can't remember if I was a little kid. It was in West Virginia or Kentucky or something, and she wore this curly wig, and she was really old. And I remember my dad warning us when we got there. He's like, you never know what kind of words might come out of her mouth. You never know what could potentially happen. So it was all a training event apparently for me because I learned words I'd never heard. And then she was talking about her son, who was in prison, dragging his fiance or girlfriend through the mud by her hair. So there you go.
Wow.
Infamous. I don't know. See, there was
Yeah.
no script, so this is going downhill super
Yeah,
fast.
I think you better tell us what your famous going to be. Because that sounds like your family's like a cultural awareness event.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I never knew that people lived like that.
Truly, that's the truth.
So what could you be famous
I mean,
for?
famous, honestly, not much. Let's see. How many strange animals I had growing up that were not normal pets that we adopted as pets, or maybe a better one would be all of the ridiculous practical jokes that I have pulled throughout my entire life, and every time said I'm getting fired for the 100th time. And never
Practical jokes,
did.
that's up there. Torturing adventures with my children. I remember
Yes.
torturing my son with alligators
Yes.
on
Yes.
a canoeing trip.
Yeah, torturing children. Yeah, that would be a.
So
I
there's a theme developing there somehow.
Nikki, what about you?
I would like to say music. I think I'm pretty good at that.
Yes.
Yep.
That would be my guess.
That would be.
So I remember, Nikki, you singing the national anthem for that huge truck event.
Oh yeah,
in
Monster
Orlando.
Jam.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was
I remember
awesome.
watching the video thinking, that stadium is absolutely full of people.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
was
what was that
70,000.
like singing in front of that many people?
It was 70,000 people, and I was so happy. I wasn't actually facing the stadium. I was facing outside of the stadium, so the stadium would be behind me, so it actually wasn't that bad. But the
That
feeling
was-
after doing that, nothing compared. Like,
Yeah.
That was so
amazing.
cool. I was like, I might actually know somebody famous.
Yeah.
Nikki's on the trajectory.
Yeah, there you go.
So that is
Exactly.
cool. You do have an amazing voice. Patina does too. And
No, it doesn't hold a candle.
then there's me.
Have you ever been? Has anybody ever looked at you and said you look like someone famous?
Oh, no.
Never.
No. See, I should have like inserted somebody like, hey, Brad Pitt.
You should have.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I would have
Clooney.
believed you.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
The only
I
person.
look like a before model for Weight Watchers.
Stop
That's
it.
my most famous.
I had a couple people stop me, maybe like 8 or 9 years ago. People used to say I look just like Kris Jenner, and yeah, and I was
yeah,
like,
the hair. Yeah.
I was like, okay,
Wow.
kind of weird, but yeah, used to get that every once. Anyway, okay, sermon series.
Yeah. Living wisely in a complicated world.
Yeah,
And we've certainly got the complicated world thing down. James, the apostle's trying to help us with the wise part. So So this week it's me.
Yes.
Last week you led us through some. Talk a little bit about your points from last week. I thought that was
Yeah. So when we talked earlier, I was going to be talking about, doing the word. So hearing and doing.
practicing the presence of God.
So but before starting hearing, you said, before we do, we have to hear.
Right.
And we had that discussion before I started writing the sermon. And then I decided to even take it a step back, which is becoming more aware of God's presence. And that's really the very first step, is just knowing that God is there. And this sermon is for believers. It's not necessarily for people
Right.
who don't know the Lord. And then once we become more aware of God's presence, then we should be listening attentively to what God is saying. And then once God says what he is telling us, then we should do it.
Yeah.
So it's not complicated in theory, but it is complicated in applying that in our life, especially in this world that the culture is yelling at us with the loudest voice of anybody.
It's interesting. That's how I actually am going to take the end where you left off and talk about, when it comes to works, what does God really want us to look like as we're living? And James grabs a verse from Leviticus and pulls it forward to talk about who our neighbor is and how the royal command of God, or the royal, that God at a macro level wants us to treat everyone exactly the same, no partiality, no favoritism, and that he asks that of us because he is the God of incredible light. James describes him that way. So we actually picture, as believers, we picture this thing going on in heaven where there is Jesus, this radiant light from heaven, and there's just all this praise and all this glory going on, and that's what emanates down to us. It's who he is. It's like that's who he is, and this is who we are, and there's nothing else in between. There's no levels down here, layers down here. It's Jesus and us. And so James really pushes that whole idea that not to think more highly or less of ourselves or anyone else. So that's kind of what we're going to dive into this week, is how do you live like that in this world where everybody says, well, this is how these people are, and this is how that person is. And
there are tons of divisions. Like the whole world now is divided on everything. Yeah. So like, how do we bring people to level ground?
Yeah, and to do that in a way, I think the challenge for the church now is to do that in a way that's authentic and engages people. People, obviously we engage with one another inside the church, but that we engage people outside the church everywhere we go. We are the body of Christ, and that we live in such a way that people go, that's just different. That's, that's intriguing. That's inspiring to me. And I think that's the challenge, is that we get afraid sometimes of, we don't want to stick out. You don't want to stand out. It's like, don't draw attention to yourself, and living differently, that's going to happen.
I mean, I have so many scenarios, which I won't go into right now because I'm thinking about what you're going to be talking about on Sunday. I mean, how really do you live with everybody with no favoritism, when we know that our natural inclination is to be with people who are like-minded exactly like us? So how do you not show favoritism and partiality? I mean,
yeah. And, we are blessed, you and I as pastors, we're blessed to be around a lot of people that do that in their professions and their other lives that are far away from the property of the church. You interviewed Larry Smith today for your Alive episode. And Larry, to me, is just somebody that just emanates the best of what it means to know Jesus and to try to live like Jesus. So talk a little bit about how your interview went.
Yeah.
He was pretty nervous.
Larry, who is an overachiever, and came in with his book of personal notes that he wanted to talk about. And I've never had anybody do that in a live interview, but that just shows you how much he wanted to make sure that he covered what was on his heart. But Larry, what I love about Larry's story is Larry's very authentic and honest and about his life. And Larry really didn't want to talk about his early life. Larry was like so excited to talk about what God's done in his life today. But I love the fact that he is evidence of this journey of growth and his willingness to be open to God and his experience that happened a couple months ago when he got really sick and how that really changed his whole life and his encounter with God. And now it like reset him. So now he's like like he was talking about how he was not ever content with his job. And now I said, "Are you content now?" And he's like, "Yes." And so God just realigned him. It's amazing.
It is amazing, and as a friend of Larry's, I can show you the text from before the things that happened in his life experience and the text after, and how different our texting back and forth has become with him. And
Well, let's just tell a secret about Larry. So if you don't know who Larry is is a member here. He goes to traditional worship and he owns a Chick-fil-A franchise. So we know him as the Chick-fil-A guy.
He's my Chick-fil-A connection.
He is the connection. But do you remember we were in a staff meeting and when he talks about his chair and how he sat in this chair for weeks and he's sick of the chair because he couldn't get up out of it because he was so sick. And he was texting all of us and calling all of us. We were in a staff meeting and we thought something was really wrong. But then when we all called him at different times, he's like talking about a song that like, and he was crying over the song. And so it was like really cool that he's having this moment.
It was cool. And we were kidding around with him because he was also heavily medicated at the time. So we weren't sure how much of it was inspiration and how much was medication, but it was a moment with him and God. So
it was great.
So, we've got a couple of, I was in a meeting last night with the folks that are planning our Vacation Bible School. We have such great people that are working with that. Jess Poulin and Ann Masterson, and then Lainey, who's our youth director, is helping out with that. And we have all these incredible volunteers that are teachers in their professional callings, and they're jumping into VBS they're doing this whole theme of victory sports and kind of thing. And so it was really exciting. And I thought we were full. I didn't think we had any spaces left, but I found out last night that we do have some spaces left.
Okay.
So hopefully, if you haven't found a spot or a space for your kids to do something elementary age with Vacation Bible School, we'd love to add them into that. And I just assumed that we had filled up because it started filling up.
That's the third week in June.
Third week in June. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then we've got there's youth activities of trips they're taking before that. And then we have camps and all. So, call the church, go online.
Yeah, there's so many things that we're doing this summer for elementary age. And then by extension, our middle school and our high schoolers are helping with a lot of those things. And they've got stuff coming up. They're doing big stuff, which is a week-long experience on the beach up in Panama City.
Yeah.
And I'm driving for that. So
how'd you get roped into that?
Man,
oh my goodness.
That's gonna be.
Oh, you know what? Okay, so speaking of that, so you come into my office today, and you're drenched from head to toe. I'm like, what are you doing? And I heard that you went out with the preschoolers and tried to attack them with water.
I had a great experience last year. The ECC, our preschool, they do a water day, and so Miss Ann last year, I had my Super Soaker squirt gun, and I went out there last year and I just started hosing down the kids, and they were all running away, and so I went out to do it this year. She reminded me this morning. She's like, "Hey, tell Pastor Brian that water day today." So I go out with my Super Soaker and I start hosing down the kids, and it was like all of them had this moment where they figured out, it's like, why are we running from this man? And they all en masse turned on me and just cups of water, pitchers of water, squirt guns. They just absolutely soaked me. And I'm so old, I'm immediately covering up my glasses and my hearing aid and, my wallet. You got a lot of
Your
equipment. When you get to
phone,
be our age, you got a lot of equipment.
Yes.
But yeah, I got to go home and change clothes because they did. They soaked me. It was
awesome.
fun, though. We had a good time.
Well, it's a nice day out there today, too. So, anything else going on? I think that pretty much covers it,
No,
right?
as always, we've got Wednesday night tonight for a couple more weeks. So there's good food tonight, and our classes. Even if you haven't been yet, you can jump into one of our classes. The one that we're doing in the fellowship hall, One Another, is about the whole nature of church coming together, and we'd love to have you for that. But yeah, good things happening tonight for youth and children at 6:30 also. Along with our adult offerings. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Well, listen, hope to see you guys tonight or Sunday morning or Saturday night. In the meantime, have a blessed week, guys.